It's time!
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now.
Hello, and welcome to the TWSN Patreon page. Here we will provide you with the sports betting tips, picks, and information in order for you to become a successful gambler. We have 5 packages that I think really do an incredible job of providing the information tailored to you, what you want, and what your sports betting needs are. For more information, reach out to the TWSN team, but we have a ton of stuff coming your way. Content from fantasy football, sports betting for UFC, NBA, NHL, and of course, the NFL. We are so excited to be able to bring this service to you, and let us know if there's any more information you need.
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now because it's the place that it all goes down on.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another week's edition of Strikes and Submissions, No Decisions. Mike, Dorian, we back again. How you feeling today?
We're back. We are back. Yet another Thursday, ready to attack this episode and get into a lot of stuff.
For sure. And first and foremost, guys, thank you guys for getting us to 1K subscribers on YouTube. That's huge for the company. Golf claps. But still, make sure you guys share it. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter as well, where we post all the news and highlights of any sport you love. And we have a great show today. We're going to recap some boxing. Going to dig into a little bit of Bellator, a little bit of UFC, get into some retirement talk. So let's dive straight into it, Mike. Your boy Tito got knocked unconscious the other day. How'd you like that fight?
The problem with the Tito Ortiz fight is that you have someone in Tito who was doing this pretty much for the paycheck. I'm going to say it bluntly. He saw a bag and pursued it. Can't blame him for it. But that's a risk that he took by signing on to fight someone like Anderson Silva. The reason why I say there's a difference in the mentality between Ortiz and Silva is because Ortiz was focused on the money. It was a great payday. Silva is passionate about boxing. He's passionate about fighting. If it hadn't been for the UFC, he would still be a member of their organization. He would still be in the UFC, but they cut ties with him. And that's fine. He went his way. He figured out I can still box. I can still pursue my passion, although I'm 46 years old. And you can't knock Anderson Silva for that. It was just a bad move on Tito Ortiz's part to step in there with someone who is an elite striker. And I don't blame Tito for not cutting the extra 5 pounds, although he had to give up 20% of his purse. I don't think anyone really wants to do that, but he probably thought, all right, if I'm going to keep on these extra 5 pounds instead of cutting it, I'm going to have the power advantage. But when it came time to fighting, he was throwing a lot of arm punches. And with Anderson Silva, what he really did, he just bent his knees, worked his way through it defensively, and then just teed off with a monstrous overhand right. When I first saw that punch, when it landed, I didn't think too much of it. But then when I went back and saw the replay, how vicious and brutal it was, I realized that Anderson has the technique and the power to put guys away in boxing. And Tito Ortiz was just a victim.
A victim indeed. I'm glad you mentioned that. He just took it for a paycheck. We see what's going on with the celebrity boxing. MMA guy will come over, get a big paycheck. They're both MMA guys, so, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It all looks good. I think that the winner of that fight was the fans. A lot of fans hate Tito Ortiz, and a lot more fans love Anderson Silva. When we see, the bob and weave, the head movement just come up, boom, sleep. On the ropes, fell out, didn't even have to count. As soon as he hit him, I was like, yeah, Tito's not getting up. That was the first thing I said. I was like, yeah, Tito's not getting up from that. And it wasn't because it's fixed. It wasn't because this is a Triller event and they'd never get up after the first knockdown. Because Anderson Silva really does hit that hard. Like we've seen it in MMA against Julio Chavez Jr. He was throwing some power shots. I didn't think that he was gonna just lightly tap Tito as he was fighting, like as if he was sparring. Like he's going to come out, he's going to embarrass Tito. Said it last week. I thought it would be a viral knockout. He's going to embarrass Tito. He did both those things. One thing I do want to mention, the best part of all this is just the aftermath. Tito Ortiz and his girlfriend, I believe, or his fiance, are going home, right? They're on a flight. There's one first class ticket, one economy ticket. As a man, Mike, you can speak to this. Is chivalry dead? Because Tito was going to take the first class ticket and sit in first class and have his fiance or his girl or whoever she is sit in economy by herself until Anderson Silva was like, you know what? I got you, Playboy. I took a little bit of your purse. Let me upgrade your girl. Get her in first class, man. I don't know. Is chivalry dead?
You know what, Dorian? I don't know, but you could blame Tito for not giving up his ticket, but the man got knocked out, for crying out loud. I'll give him the pass. Who I am going to blame, though, why didn't Triller have 2 first-class tickets for Tito Ortiz? Are we really being that stingy when you had President Trump commentating? I'm sure he got a lucrative payday. You couldn't fork over some extra money for Tito Ortiz and his girlfriend, for both of them to fly first class? Triller, come on. You dropped the ball yet again.
I mean, maybe they didn't. Maybe you're onto something. They gave all their money to Trump, Jorge, and JDS. It's possible. They didn't have no money. Hey, you didn't tell me you were bringing a +1, Tito. But yeah, it was just fun to watch. It lasted all of 55, 60 seconds maybe. It was real fun to watch. But then the main event, once that happened, oh, I was so happy. I was so hyped. I'm the biggest Anderson Silva fan. He got me into combat sports. So, when he did that, I was so hyped, and I was riding high. And then Vitor and Holyfield were about to square off. And I'm like, okay, I got to calm myself down. I didn't think it would be as bad as what Anderson just did to Tito. It might have been worse, Mike. That might have been worse. I know I saw a whole bunch of people, oh, Holyfield, he didn't look that bad. The ref stopped it too. Like, no. Vitor dropped Holyfield multiple times. And Vitor, like you said, Tito was in there for a paycheck. Vitor was in there for a paycheck too. He just wanted to get in and get out before the old man got his bones warmed up and, Grandpa Holyfield could take a nice dive. And I'm glad the ref stopped the fight. The fight should have never been made. Should have never been able to step in for Oscar. But Vitor gave up some pounds. I got to give credit where it's due. You knock out Holyfield, man. I don't care how old he is. That's a notch on your belt as a combat athlete. So he'll be able to tell his grandkids that, yeah, I knocked that guy out. That guy you see had Tyson scared. Yeah, I put him to sleep. Like that's cool for Vitor to say. I don't think he ever will. He was very humble in the win. Shouts out Nader. But yeah, it was very fun to watch. I don't know if you have any additional takeaways from the Holyfield-Belfort fight.
The only thing I can say is 60-year-olds should not be fighting. I'm sorry. Whether he's 58 or 60, I believe he's 58, shouldn't be fighting. There's a reason why he took 10 years off, because he thought his career was over. It was so painful to watch, because this is the same man who was the cruiserweight champion of the world, then moved up to heavyweight, was supposed to fight Mike Tyson in the early 90s. That fight didn't happen until later on in the 90s, and then they ended up fighting each other twice. The hero we know and love and have come to appreciate over all these years in Evander Holyfield, he shouldn't be fighting anymore. And it pains me to say that, because I think everyone loves him for the boxer that he is, but I think he took the fight for all the wrong reasons. And I believe Oscar De La Hoya would have put up a better fight. I still think he would have been knocked out by Vitor Belfort, but at least Oscar has been training. And although Evander's in great shape, he's 60. 60-year-olds, look, you put any 60-year-old in the ring, they're going to show that they're 60. At least with Oscar, he was 48. 10 years does make a big difference, whether you want to say it or not. It does. I think Oscar would have fared a little bit better. Still think he would have lost, but it was just, as a boxing fan, it was a crushing defeat because you never want to see your heroes go out on their back, and that's what happened.
Yeah, and credit to him. He was getting up. He was trying to fight. He answered the count. He didn't get like overly slept. Like it wasn't like a Pacquiao slept where he's face flat on the mat. And yeah, I don't know why. What's the point in medically suspending him? Tell him he can never compete again. Don't suspend him medically. I saw Tito has like a 60-day suspension. Tito's not never boxing again. I'm letting you guys know that now. You can lift the suspension. You can suspend him for another 60 days if you want. But yeah, Vitor, put them paws on him. And if you have any access to YouTube or anything, type in Vitor Belfort highlights, and you'll see he did that to a lot of people in his career. So I don't think that, Holyfield has anything to hang his head. Like you said, 60-year-old shouldn't be fighting. I think, this is me personally, I think he got the call. Hey, you want to make a couple $1 million? All right, cool. You're going to have to box him. Yeah, no, it's next week. Okay, cool. You down? Okay, cool. And you would hope Holyfield's a little bit more well off. Like, I'll say it again. He got to get up with George Foreman, man. Get him in the grill business so he never has to do this again to make a quick buck. But overall, the fights actually were pretty good. I enjoyed the night. This weekend, we have some MMA fights. Back to my wheelhouse, back to our wheelhouse. You got Bellator 266, Phil Davis, Yoel Romero, his first ever Bellator fight. I'm hyped. This has been long awaited. Him, he had gotten cut from the UFC, I think about a year ago or so. Still hasn't fought, had some medical issues with his eye, had to get clearance. He's finally cleared. He's fighting next week. Who you got?
Phil Davis. I have Phil Davis because everyone and their mother is overlooking him. I understand he lost his last fight to Vadim Nemkov, but it's Vadim Nemkov, for crying out loud, the guy who's projected to win the light heavyweight World Grand Prix. But we think because Phil Davis lost so handily to Nemkov in their rematch that Yoel Romero is going to make his Bellator debut and just walk all over him. No, he's not. I don't think he is. I think it's going to be a very close fight. Primarily, I think it's going to be striking because both of these guys are great wrestlers. That's something they are known for, but they don't always use it. I would say Phil Davis uses it a bit more than Yoel has in the past, but Phil, he's an excellent fighter, and his striking is something that many people overlook, especially that overhand right. He has a bomb that can put people out. He hurt Liam McGeary a few years ago, and that was a fight to me that really stood out. Yoel Romero, obviously, you can't overlook his punching power. And if Phil Davis gets careless at any point in time and Romero lands that one shot, we could be talking about Yoel Romero being 1-0 in his Bellator career. But Phil Davis is not the guy you want to go up against making your debut. The reason why I say that, Dorian, Yoel Romero was supposed to make his debut on May 7th against Anthony Rumble Johnson. That's a much different fight than it is against Phil Davis. Don't get me wrong, Rumble Johnson might be the most powerful man on the planet. But in terms of technicalities, he's not Phil Davis. Phil Davis is a tough customer for anybody. And for him to make his debut at 44 years old, I think it is a recipe for people to make the wrong pick. That's the best way for me to put it, Dorian.
I kind of agree with that. I could see the age / ring rust being an issue. And to your last point, Rumble was coming out of retirement to fight him, so it was a little bit more of an even matchup.
It was even, yeah.
I see here that his last match was against Izzy, which was a super duper boring fight. But that was in March of 2020. This is before COVID had even hit. So he hasn't fought in an empty arena. He hasn't fought since. Don't know how his training was. You know, he had the eye issue. We don't know if that, maybe he needed surgery again. So it's going to be tough for Yoel to get a win. I think opposite of you. I think the odds are stacked against him. Phil Davis, active, coming off a loss, trying to get back into the title picture, maybe after the Grand Prix is over. He does use his wrestling a lot more than Yoel. I think Yoel maybe negatively uses his wrestling, given how he's an Olympic. Didn't he win bronze for Cuba, I believe?
Yes.
So he's an Olympic, like a high-level Olympic athlete, not just an Olympian, but he medaled as an Olympic.
But that was also in 2000. Sorry to cut you off, but that was a long time ago.
Right, but he didn't get into MMA until after that. So he was always the older guy. I mean, but just look at him though. Yoel is a
specimen.
If you picked up like an action figure, Yoel would look more ripped than that action figure would. So like, I don't think as far as the technicality or ring rust has to do with anything, I don't think he has to deal with that as much as it is the change of scenery. You're no longer in the UFC main eventing. You're in Bellator main eventing. How's the media obligations? How's the walkout? Is the walkout the same? Is it different? You know, Bellator, they just might walk straight to the cage. You might, see them getting, Vaseline put on them before. I think it's going to be all the little things that are different for Yoel that's going to cause him trouble. I have him winning, though. I can't say that I can see a way and Phil Davis wins. I do think it will go to decision, so I'm picking against Yoel for a decision because he always gasses out in 3-round fights. We're gonna see if his cardio can hold up here in the main event. But I do think Yoel gets the job done over Phil Davis. I think he probably goes to the cards against Phil. Honestly, I don't think any wrestling is going to be implemented on either side. I don't think Phil can take him down. I don't think Yoel wants to take him down. I think it's going to be, like you said, a striking exchange. Maybe Yoel clip him, have a big round to kind of sit on. But I don't see him losing. That's for damn sure.
You don't see Yoel losing?
No, not at all. I just think it's too perfect. Like, it's set up, you're main eventing, you missed out on the Grand Prix, but here you go. And this guy just got knocked out of the Grand Prix. I don't know. I think the cards are aligning. The stars are aligning. I think Yoel gets it done. Hopefully he's had some time to work on his cardio in the last almost 2 years off now. So I think he'll edge him out. Yeah.
We're banking on a lot of ifs here. If he's able to last 5 rounds, if he's able to hang in there with Phil Davis. I think this is going to go the distance. I don't think anyone's getting stopped or submitted or anything like that. But Phil Davis has nasty leg kicks. That's something that I think Yoel has to look out for. Phil Davis also has a pretty solid jab. So does Yoel. But Phil Davis, when it comes to striking, I think he's going to find a way to get the advantage. And to a point you said, and this is why I think Yoel Romero is going to lose. There is an adjustment period to any promotion you join. Look at Michael Chandler last year. He went from Bellator to the UFC. The advantage he had was that he was the alternate fighter at UFC 254. It allowed him to adjust to the scenery, see how the UFC went about things, whether it's the media, walkouts, being in the arena on fight night, without actually having to fight. And then 3 months later, when he went up against Dan Hooker, he had that in his back pocket. Didn't have to worry about it because he already went through it. That's a big thing to adjust to, especially when you're a star like Yoel Romero is in the MMA world. A lot of people want to talk to you. And I think at 44 years old, he's here for a short time. He needs to get a win because if he loses to Phil Davis, I don't think he has a very long tenure in Bellator. I just don't think so. So he has to win. And that's why I think all the pressure is on Yoel Romero to deliver.
I agree with you. I don't think he has a long tenure in Bellator at all. I think this and maybe one more big fight. Maybe they do get the Rumble fight together. I think he came over to Bellator for paychecks, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't think he's here trying to compete for a title. I think he just wants to fight the big name guys. And, Phil Davis, an old UFC guy. He's an old UFC guy. Okay, we can match up. So it'll be interesting. And to one of your points, I think his technicality, has that ever been an issue for Yoel? I think like leg kicks, okay. But Yoel has some nasty leg kicks. Like he did tear Robert Whittaker's ACL with leg kicks. And then, if it does come down to wrestling, Yoel is an Olympic wrestler. Like I think all of the technicality advantages you're speaking for Phil actually go for Yoel.
I disagree. I think in Bellator, how Phil Davis was able to string together such a long winning streak, I think that favors him because Yoel, although he was a top flight contender in the UFC, probably should have been champion if we're being honest here in the UFC. He's taken over a year and a half off. I don't care what anyone says. There's going to be ring rust. So yes, Yoel Romero is a solid striker, but he was also outpointed by Paulo Costa. He was outpointed by Robert Whittaker. Israel Adesanya did the same thing to him. It's not like guys haven't written a blueprint on how to beat Yoel Romero standing on the feet. I think Phil Davis can do that.
But listen to the three you just named. Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa.
Okay.
Those might be the 1, 2, and 3 best middleweights on the planet. And now this is at light heavyweight. So Yoel doesn't have to cut down. I mean, because Yoel has had scale issues. What was it? The first fight against Whittaker, I think he wasn't eligible to win the title. I think it was the first or the second one he missed weight. But he's missed weight before. Now he doesn't have to cut that extra 20 pounds. He can be a 205er. Like I think he was meant to be. Phil Davis isn't overly lengthy. He won't have to deal with a range issue. I think Yoel gets in. I think this is going to be a good fight, and I think it'll go the full 5-5s, and I think Yoel will come out. If not a split, probably unanimous decision. I could see this being like a split decision, razor-thin fight.
Yeah.
We want to see Yoel back, and he's so exciting. It was back and forth. I could definitely see a super competitive fight like that.
Like Paulo Costa, that fight between Costa and Romero, but it turned out that it was Costa's favor. I don't think you're wrong. I think there is a possibility that Yoel Romero could come out on the winning side of a decision. But my biggest thing, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, my biggest thing is, although Yoel Romero is a massive star in MMA and has a great track record, making your debut in a promotion against someone with the experience like Phil Davis, not easy.
Fair. Yeah, okay. Phil Davis isn't, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I think Bellator, UFC, I think the lights shrink. No disrespect to Bellator, but, the UFC is the biggest promotion on the planet. The lights shrink. So I think Yoel may have to do less, and actually it'll help him be better. But we'll see. One thing I did want to touch on, another topic we have here, is this week's fight night for the UFC in, ironically, the heavyweight division. Seems like they matched that up perfectly. We have Lionheart Anthony Smith up against Superman Ryan Spann. This is going to be a fight I think has fight of the year potential, let alone fight of the night potential. But who do you have winning this fight?
I have to go with Anthony Lionheart Smith. You probably disagree, and that's all right. But Anthony Lionheart Smith, the way he was able to bounce back after losing to John Jones, he won a fight against Alexander Gustafsson, and then he lost 2 consecutive fights to Glover Teixeira in 2020 and Alexander Rakic also in 2020. He was able to bounce back against Devin Clark, who is a common opponent and a common victor between Smith and Spann. And then his last fight, he just beat Jimmy Crute. Anthony Smith said it perfectly. It was either today or sometime this week. He said, I'm not worried about this fight because I know Ryan Spann can show me nothing that I haven't seen before. That's the biggest thing. This is Ryan Spann's first main event. Anthony Smith has been there, done that before. Also, in that Devin Clark fight, that wasn't supposed to be a main event. If you remember, last November, that was supposed to be a 3-round fight, the co-main event, but the Curtis Blades, Derek Lewis original fight, that was postponed because of COVID. And then Anthony Smith has fought on big stages before. This is Ryan Spann's first test where he's being put out on a massive stage. Anthony Lionheart Smith, where everywhere Ryan Spann is very good at, Anthony Smith is just as good, if not better, than Spann is. I don't think this is a very favorable matchup. I think this will be a decision victory for Anthony Smith. I don't think he's going to be able to put away Ryan Spann because Ryan Spann has great submission game as well. That's something that I think you have to worry about if you're Anthony Smith. But Anthony Smith also submitted Devin Clark. Anthony Smith knows what he's doing on the ground as well. I am just of the school of thought that wherever Ryan Spann tries to take the fight, Anthony Smith will use that experience, use the recent losses he's experienced, and overcome them.
It's a good point. I think also Ryan Spann has learned from his loss against Johnny Walker.
Yep.
I think that was the fight. Yeah, he was on a takedown, and Johnny Walker just kept hitting him in the back of the head, and his coaches are yelling, "That's in the back of his head." And Spann ended up getting KO'd in that fight. But Spann has bounced back off of a loss too. Usually, I would disagree with you, but I don't know. I have a feeling Anthony Smith is going to get it done.
Okay.
And like Dash said, he always seems to go the distance. It's always a close fight. It's always a great fight with him. I think this fight goes one of two ways. One, Spann comes out, starches him, goes home. Two, Anthony Smith grinds him out for as long as it takes to take his back and get a rear naked choke. Or a submission like that, because it's not going to be – he's not going to armbar him. It's not going to be nothing like that. It's going to be, oh, I'm tired. Let me give you my back, and now that's the fight type of submission, I feel like, more so than a technical submission. And one thing I do want to dispute with you is Ryan Spann's ground game. Or submission game. I don't know if he has a good submission game or if he just has a good guillotine. Because I think there's a big difference. I was looking at a few of his previous fights. I saw his one fight against the dude off the Contender Series where he got the contract. People just duck their heads up against the cage and he gillies them. It's never like he set up the submission. From what I've seen, I might have missed the fight or two, but it never seems like he's setting submissions up or he's that skilled on the ground. I think he just beats people into awkward positions and then he finishes them, which no knock. I think Anthony Smith does the exact same thing. I think these two are literally prototype light heavyweight clones. One just has 45 fights and the other one has 20 fights. But I do think Anthony Smith gets the submission victory, actually. I don't pick decisions. So submission victory here for Anthony Smith.
So we agree, but I do have to disagree, though, when it comes to Ryan Spann and the type of fighter he is. Dorian, if you have 11 submissions on your record, regardless of how they come, you're a submission specialist because he has 19 total wins, and that means more than half of them are subs. That to me, because you know how he sets them up, especially with a lot of the guillotines. He does what AJ McKee did to Patricio Pitbull. He barrages you, your neck is vulnerable, and he cranks it. He's a strong guy, too, at 205. Ryan Spann could probably be a heavyweight if he wanted to. I think he has the body and the physique to fill out nicely at heavyweight. But I think Anthony Smith has to be weary of that guillotine. And that's why I have to say that Ryan Spann is a threat on the ground or is a threat with his submissions. Whether I think he's going to win or not, I don't think he's going to win, but he is a threat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to discredit him saying he's not a threat.
I know you're not.
On the ground, but I don't view it the same. I would feel if this fight goes to the ground, it's because Anthony Smith took it there. It's not because Ryan Spann got it there or he wants it there. I don't think he wants it there. And to your point earlier with the experience just playing a factor, when right before he said, you know, he can't show me anything I haven't seen, he said, look, I fought everybody there is to fight in this division, from John Jones, you know, to whoever, Santos, Glover. I fought them all. He isn't them. So I think he's kind of coming in underestimating Spann a little bit. I think he's looking past this fight. I think that's a mistake. And I hope he isn't serious when he says things like that. Oh, I'm looking past this fight. You know, I saw him say he wants the rematch against Rakic. I'm like, man, hold on. You got to get through Spann, because if you lose, Rakic isn't rematching you. Like, Rakic wants Yuri or the belt. You're not in that ballpark. And I guess that kind of leads us to our sub point. What do you think is next for the winner of this fight?
You know what? Because the light heavyweight division is muddled, they might fight Alexander Rakic, because I don't think Alexander Rakic is getting a title fight. Yuri Prohaska looks to me that he's going to fight the winner of Jan Blachowicz, Glover Teixeira. If he doesn't step in as the alternate for that fight, because that's what he will be. In terms of who's next in line after the next heavyweight title fight, a light heavyweight title fight rather, I believe the winner of this one will have to fight Rakic. That makes a lot of sense for that one. If Anthony Smith wins this fight and then he is able to get past Rakic, which is going to be a very tough task, he might be in the conversation for fighting for a title again. But it all comes down to Saturday night. I don't necessarily know if he's looking past Ryan Spann. He might be. I think the reason why he knows he can beat him is because he's an analyst. He has his analyst hat on, and the guy studies film of so many different fighters. He's on shows that the UFC produces talking about fights. So he knows how to break down fighters. Mm-hmm. Clearly, he studied Ryan Spann's film. And he sees something that he thinks he can exploit, and that's why he's not worried about it. So, yeah, inherently he is overlooking Ryan Spann, but I don't think he's overlooking him in a way that, for example, Patricio Pitbull just overlooked AJ McKee. I don't think it's like that. I just think he's just very confident in his own set of skills.
And he should be confident. He should be confident because he does have, like you said, the advantage everywhere, it seems. But when fighters start to talk like that, you can see straight through it. It's like, oh, he's scared. He's just talking. But Anthony Smith like genuinely believes like, oh yeah, I fought this guy 20 times already. Overhand right, overhand left, gonna try to take me down, take my back, choke me out. Like he thinks he has the game plan. If Spann comes out with a very kick heavy game plan or something like that, something that he wasn't expecting, I think he can throw a wrench in not only this fight, but the light heavyweight title picture. Because if Smith wins, I agree, give him Rakic, or maybe Ankalaev. I'm blanking on his first name, but you can give him Ankalaev maybe. But if Spann wins, I don't think he can jump all the way up to Rakic, given that he lost to Johnny Walker. I think if they're going to try to keep Paul Craig and Gustafsson together, I think if they don't, Paul Craig would be a nice matchup for him. They're both kind of 10 to 15 ranked. I'm not sure their specific numbers, but they're both ranked similarly close, unless they're keeping the Gustafsson fight together. I think Paul Craig wants to because he's a big Gustafsson fan. But I think, honestly, Spann, if he's really, really impressive, he might be able to call for Rakic, but I don't see how he jumps, 3-4 people. But Anthony Smith can, because he has the cachet. He's been there, done that, challenged for the title already, fought basically everyone in the rankings already, so he can jump around. I think Spann is going to have to kind of keep chipping away at it.
He should have to chip away, but the way the light heavyweight division is structured, it's not that hard to jump up. It may be hard to fight for a title, but to jump up in that number one contender spot, I'm looking at it now. Anthony Smith is number 6 in the light heavyweight division. Could we see Ryan Spann fight Magomed Ankalaev, like you said? That's a possibility. Volkan Ozdemir, he's out there. I'm not sure what Thiago Santos' status is. I didn't look that up.
Ozdemir and Ankalaev are matched up, I think.
Okay.
But the winner, I'm speaking of the winner of that fighting the winner of this fight.
That might make sense, but if Anthony Smith wins, I think you have to put him up against Rakic because it makes sense. Rakic doesn't really have a dancing partner, and they've already fought, so there's a history there. Spann, Personally, I would be fine with throwing Spann in with Rakic because I feel like if you beat Anthony Smith, you earn the right to fight a top 5 guy. I think you earn the right that way because Smith is 6. So are you going to go back now? No. You're going to keep going forward. So that's why I think if Spann beats number 6 Anthony Smith, it's only right for him to fight someone in the top 3 or top 5.
Yeah, he's going to take his number. If he wins, he'll take his 6, and then I guess he'll have to fight accordingly, fight up. Like you said, you wouldn't want to fight back. That makes sense. Interesting to see that. We have movement in the light heavyweight division because Jan only defends the belt once a year. So good to see that. That's why I kind of chuckled when you said the light heavyweight division is muddled. Yeah, because the champ only fights once a year.
Yeah. Well, he's also older too, and he has a kid. I can't blame him.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of these guys have kids, but yeah, him being older, he's not fighting, once every 2-3 months. That's for sure. Like some of the younger guys, but it's interesting to see. He is going to defend it against Glover, so I'm ready for that. I have my own predictions on that. I think I might have spoiled it before. I think Glover's going to win. Just leave this here so I can snip it later on. But yeah, last thing we have, a couple retirements, man. One really hurt my heart. Guy been watching for a long time, finally retiring from the UFC. Sucks to see you go, Luke Sanders. No, I'm just like you. But Joseph Benavidez retired, one of the pioneers of the little guy in MMA or in UFC, alpha male product, one of Uriah's guys, 25, 35er. And I was seeing on the timeline, the MMA Twitter community was giving him his praises. And I just kind of want to ask you, aside from your overall thoughts of his career overall, but do you think he's one of the best fighters to never win a title?
I was actually thinking about this. Joseph Benavidez is a borderline UFC Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He is, because if you fight for a title 4 times like he did, he has to be up there for someone who was talented enough to be the champion, but had to fight guys like Dominic Cruz in WEC, had to fight Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, Henry Cejudo, Davison Figueiredo, a murderer's row this guy had to fight. And the longevity in his career just shows that if I had a Hall of Fame vote, I would vote for Joseph Benavidez because he's fought 15 years in MMA, 10 years in the UFC. Like I said, fought for the title 4 times. That's a lot to be fighting for the title. It's a great career, and he would have my vote for the Hall of Fame. Maybe not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he deserves to be in the UFC Hall of Fame or the MMA Hall of Fame. He deserves to be there because although he didn't win a championship, he was always on the cusp. And even though he lost in March, he was still hanging around that 125-pound top contender area. That's where he was. So I think you have to give the man his due and just say that it was a phenomenal career. And he's a borderline Hall of Famer, if not Hall of Famer.
For sure. And I mean, like you said, Murderer's Row, when you look at his record and you look at the dudes he fought, and it's like, you basically beaten everyone there was to beat except Dominic Cruz, who's a 135 GOAT, Mighty Mouse, who's the 125 GOAT, and then Figueiredo twice, which the first time he missed weight.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph shouldn't have fought him the second time because it was even worse. But yeah, you go back to back with Figgy, who was looking like he's about to be the face of the flyweight division for a long, long time to come before Moreno got in there with him the second time. And they actually just got booked for the trilogy. So we'll speak on that a little later in time. But yeah, so and then I think his last fight was against Askar.
Yep, in March.
His two first names, or his name is his last name is funny, Askarov. But yeah, so he just lost to him, and I think that's why he retired, because he realized, all right, I'm not losing to the best guy in the division anymore. I'm not losing to the champ anymore. I'm losing to the second or the third or the fourth. And we say it on the show all the time. We don't like to see our heroes fall from the top. We don't like to see the best fall and lose 4 or 5 straight before they retire. We just retire after the first or second one, you know. So he had I was going through watching some of his best finishes. He had this mean guillotine on Tim Elliott and had his arms like he was mounted in a guillotine, had his arms locked, and he choked him out. And then after the fight, he called it the Joa Constrictor. So want to just shout out Joey B one time. Megan O'Leary is his wife, so I'm sure he'll still be around, maybe commentary, maybe popping up every once in a while if she can get him on the show or something like that. But I think he is one of the best little guys in MMA history.
Mm-hmm.
I think he will make the Hall of Fame. Just because he didn't win a belt, that doesn't mean that much. But he did have times he fought for the belt. Similar with Uriah. You know, Uriah fought 4 or 5 times for the belt and came up short every time. You can't really continue to give that guy a shot. But with Joey B, you had to, because he was beating everybody else until he got to the title fight and lost. All right, cool. But yeah, salute Joseph Benavidez. Great career. Glad he called it quits before he started to, you know, go through another murderer's row of the next generation, because he was in, like you said, 10, 15 years in MMA. He's fought 2-3 generations probably now. Another guy who retired kind of closer to the beginning of our show, Carlos Condit, man, the natural born killer. For me, that was one of the coolest nicknames growing up. Real quick, big video game UFC Undisputed 3 guy, UFC Undisputed 2. He's one of the guys I always used to use in the welterweight division because he could throw a head kick and he could defend takedowns really well. Before I was even really watching MMA, that's how I knew Carlos Condit. And then I saw, you know, the war he had against Robbie Lawler. You know, he beat Nick Diaz. Like, the Diaz brothers were always cool to me because they just talked their smack and did what they had to do inside the cage too. So Carlos Condit, I think he won the belt, actually. I think he was an interim champ. I think he's probably going to make the UFC Hall of Fame. I think we can agree on that. It's probably closer to the Hall of Fame than Benavidez is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just one time for Joey B, one time for the natural born killer. Shouts out Carlos Condit. But I don't know if you had any words for Carlos.
He was just an absolute killer. It's fitting that his name was the natural born killer. I remember when he fought Martin Kampmann for the second time, and he knocked out Martin Kampmann after fighting him in 2009. Carlos Condit was someone that you could never count out of a fight, regardless of who he was fighting, especially earlier on in his career when he was in his prime. He was an absolute savage. The biggest thing, and the last thing I'll say about Condit, he had the mind of a warrior, but the problem is that his body betrayed him. So you have someone who has this absolute killer mindset, yet the body's breaking down, and there's this conflict. And the Carlos Condit that we grew to love was no longer there. Still a solid fighter, beat Court McGee last year, lost to Max Griffin this year. Still a solid fighter, but not the same. But I am glad, though, Carlos Condit had a very long career. I'm sure was paid very handsomely, especially in the George St. Pierre fight. Salute to Carlos Condit as well as Joseph Benavidez. Great careers from both of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really all you can say is it's funny you mentioned the GSP fight because now I'm thinking about it. I thought he was going to beat GSP. And I'm known here at TWSN as the GSP hater, but I promise you, growing up, I was the biggest GSP fan. But I thought he was going to beat him because I don't know how you dealt with his head kicks. Like I didn't see anyone really dealing with. I thought he was just going to run through GSP. I'm not going to lie, but obviously didn't. But yeah, he left us with some great fights. You know, they have plenty of wars. And like you said, I guess I'll wrap up on this. When your body breaks down on you a little earlier than maybe you want to go, we can see it before they can see it usually because you had 3, 4, 5 wars. And I'm talking blood everywhere, eyes cut, nose broken, lip busted, swollen. Yeah, your body's going to betray you after a few of those because that's not what the body was meant to do. Even if you are a natural born killer like Carlos, the body's going to fail you eventually. As an athlete, all athletes, the body will fail you one day, and just walk away before it does that, especially in combat sports because it can get ugly. Ask Evander Holyfield.
That's for sure. Evander Holyfield, man, please don't fight again. That's all I got to say. And that's why it's heartwarming to hear stories of Joseph Benavidez and Carlos Condit getting out while they still have their faculties together. Evander Holyfield, it's a heartbreaking story, to be quite honest with you. It pains me to have to see that guy who's a shell of himself having to step into the ring at 58. Meanwhile, you have Carlos Condit, who's around 40, and Joseph Benavidez, who's 37. They're calling it a quits. So kudos to those guys.
Kudos to those guys, man. And I think that's all we have for them tonight. Is there anything else you need to touch on before we give the streets what they need?
Next week's show is going to be electric. We got some UFC 266 to talk about. So next week's going to be just as good, if not better, than this week.
For sure, for sure. And guys, again, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Twitter. Follow me down here on all socials. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We just hit 1K, so shouts out to that. And one last thing. I want to mention this last week. UFC, I see what you're doing. You're hyping up Alex Pereira. Israel Adesanya's last knockout loss was to Alex Pereira. I see what you're doing, UFC. Make sure it works. Make sure he pans out because this is the fight to make. I don't want to get too into it now, but I see what you're doing. That's all. But yeah, strikes and submissions, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in again. We out.
Get up, let me begin.